everybody, welcome back to Biblical Greek Made Easy. This is class 2 of module 1, and this is a very important lesson today. Today we're going to learn the first 2 cases of nouns in Greek. And so this is the start of learning the Greek system, how Greek is going to form sentences for the rest of your Greek career. We start to learn that today. It's a really important fundamental lesson, and I'm excited to teach it to you. And so let me encourage you here as we get started. Zechariah 4:10 says, "Do not despise small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin." And friends, that's where you are. We're at the beginning of this process. We just learned the alphabet and pronunciation and syllabification last time. Today we're starting noun cases, but this is all still pretty beginner and it may feel new. Keep pushing, keep going. It's worth it. Believe me. Okay? So here's the tip of the day. The tip of the day is to embrace the case. Now this system of using cases to determine function in the sentence, which we're going to talk about, I'm going to define all this for you, don't worry. But this is different than English. If you've only ever spoke English, if you haven't learned a language that uses cases before, which is probably almost all of us, this is going to seem a little bit new. And so I want to encourage you just to embrace the case. We're going to have to unlearn some of the stuff we've learned in English and then relearn it in Greek. But that's what I'm here for. I'm your coach. I'm with you every step of the way. So let's do it. Let's get started. So let's talk about why this matters. We'll do this every time. Why does this matter? Well, nouns are the building blocks of any language. Okay? In order to formulate sentences, we need nouns. And we learn nouns first because they're more basic. We sort of learn Greek the way a little kid would learn things. You know how little babies, when they're first learning to talk, they just point at things and say what they are, right? Those are nouns, okay? And so we're going to start there. And we begin to learn the Greek system of cases, as I mentioned before. And this is going to be fundamental. We're going to use this every sentence that we translate in the New Testament. We'll use the cases we talk about today. So let's get to it. So what is a noun in English? Okay? Think about that for a second. What is a noun in English? Well, a couple definitions for you. A noun stands for someone or something. Okay? It stands for something. It points to something real. Or you might think it's a person, a place, or a thing. Okay, either of those definitions works. It stands in for something, or it's a person, place, or a thing. And so let me show you a sentence. The top sentence in English there, this is a pretty basic sentence we might encounter. The boy threw the ball. How many nouns are in that sentence? Well, we've got boy, and we've got ball. Those are both nouns in the sentence. Then we've got that verb there in the middle for threw. And in English, we know that the boy is the one throwing the ball because of word order. Okay? So look at what I have labeled as the Greek there. This isn't a real Greek sentence. These are English words and letters and ideas acting the way that a Greek sentence would behave. But it says the boyos threw the ball on. Okay, notice that. See the letters in red at the end. Those are endings, okay? Now notice, I say also Greek, the ball on through the boy os, okay? We're used to in English that the word order is going to tell us what the subject is, what the direct object is, what's going to be acting on the verb, and what's going to be acted upon, etc. It's going to be different in Greek. We're going to do that with cases and case endings, and so word order is going to be shifted for us in Greek, okay? Remember, that's the tip of the day. Embrace the case. We need to get this. We need to learn this. We can't impose our English onto Greek because Greek is much older than English, okay? We have to relearn how to do that, and we'll learn it the Greek way here. So let's talk about case real quick. This is a key grammatical term that we're going to need to know, this idea of case. What does case mean? Well, case is the function a word plays in a sentence. Okay? You might want to write that down. Case is the function a word plays in a sentence. Okay? And we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to boil this down for you, but just a real quick way to think about that right now. We're going to switch to pronouns just for a hot second for this example, but think about the difference between I and me, the pronouns. We might say, I go to the store. Okay, but you notice you wouldn't say, me go to the store. If that personal pronoun is going to be the subject, then we use I, don't we? I go to the store. I play with a dog, etc. Now, if it's going to be the direct object, and we'll talk about what that is in just a minute, we would use me instead. He saw me, right? We wouldn't say he saw I, because that doesn't sound right. That's incorrect in English. So English pronouns are a place that we see case show up in English, okay? We don't see it show up a lot of other places, but we see it in the pronouns. Now let's take a little pause and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So there's two essential parts of a Greek noun that you'll need to know. And one is going to be the stem, and the other is going to be the case ending. There's the stem and the case ending. Think of these as like two parts, maybe like a tractor and a trailer that connect together, or a truck and a trailer that connect together, okay? And so for the example I have on the board here, logos, okay, the stem is going to be that part on the left, the lambda, omicron, gamma, omicron, okay? The loga part is the stem, and then we're going to put an ending on that stem, and that ending is what we call a case ending, okay? It's going to be controlled, it's going to be determined. What ending we use is going to be determined by the case of the word, okay? So the case ending will tell us the role that that noun plays in the sentence. That's what case does. Remember, the case is the role a word plays in the sentence, okay? So it's going to tell us the role it plays in the sentence. It's going to tell us whether it's singular or plural, okay? Whether we have one dog or two dogs, okay? The case ending is going to tell us that. And it's going to tell us the gender. And notice that I say sort of there, and here's what I mean by that. Nouns in Greek have gender. They're either going to be masculine or feminine or neuter. Those are our three cases, our three genders. Those are our three genders: masculine, feminine, and neuter. Okay? Now, when you're learning vocabulary, when you're learning nouns, you should commit to memorizing the gender with the noun. Now, sometimes, this is an ancient language kind of thing, sometimes the gender of a word makes perfect sense. Okay? So, man, aner, is masculine. Woman, gune, is feminine. Okay? We would perhaps expect that to be the case. But a lot of times it's just random. It doesn't really follow any sort of rhyme or reason. It's not necessarily connected with actual gender of human beings. It's just the way the language is formed. So we don't want to make too big of a deal over gender of nouns, but we do need to know what the gender is. We need to memorize them as we're memorizing our nouns. Okay? Because they're going to behave differently. Masculine nouns are going to take masculine case endings, feminine nouns are going to take feminine case endings, and neuter nouns are going to take neuter case endings. So when I say it's going to tell you the gender, sort of, that can be a hint as to what the gender is, but note that the gender is contained in the noun, not in the case ending. The gender of the noun comes first, and then the case ending is going to match that, rather than the other way around. A noun is not going to change its gender to take a different case ending. Does that make sense? Okay. So gender is, it's incumbent, so to speak, within the noun that we're talking about. So notice that part that I've highlighted there. The case is the role the noun plays in the sentence. And then you also see there at the end there, I have case gender number in parentheses. That's going to be really important. When we think about parsing nouns, those are the things we need to know. What's the case, what's the gender, and what's the number? All right, let's talk about this fancy grammatical word called a declension. What's a declension? Well, it sounds like a fancy yoga move that none of us can actually do because it's too difficult, right? That's not what a declension is. Actually, a declension simply refers to a pattern that a group of words follow, okay? The pattern that a group of words follow. So I'll give you an example in English. So there's a whole bunch of words in English that become plural. You go from singular to plural for a particular word just by adding an S. Look at these examples. Rocks. Rock becomes rocks just by adding an S. Brick becomes bricks just by adding an S. Blanket becomes blankets just by adding an S. That's a declension. That's a pattern of how you make certain words plural. But there's all sorts of other words that don't become plurals that way. So the word fox, you can't just put an S on the end and make it plural. In this case, you need an ES. And there's actually a whole declension, a whole pattern of words where you have to add an ES on the end to make it plural. There's another set of words, like a mouse becoming mice, where it's a completely different word. You choose a completely different word for the plural. Man and men is kind of the same way, right? You're not throwing an S, you're not throwing an ES on the end of those. You're actually substituting a different word. And so there's a declension, a pattern of words in English where the plural is a completely different word, okay? So when we talk about declensions in Greek, all we're talking about is patterns. Okay? Don't get tripped up with that fancy sounding word. A declension is just a pattern. Remember, this is Biblical Greek made easy. We're going to make this as easy as possible. Okay? So if you'd prefer, we're going to use language like the first declension, the second declension, later on the third declension. If you'd like to just call them pattern 1, pattern 2, that's totally fine. That's just as good. Now let's do a little grade school English review. And let's talk about the parts of a sentence, okay? Let's go back to grade school. Let's think about the different parts of a sentence. You may remember this back in the day. So we start with a subject. And for our purposes, we're going to assume that this subject is a noun. It could be a pronoun. It could be a proper noun. It could be a lot of different things. But let's assume that it's a noun. So you're going to have a subject as part of a sentence. And this is going to perform the action of the verb. The subject performs the action of the verb. And then we're going to have a verb. The verb is the thing it's the action element of the sentence. That's where action is going to lie. The subject is going to perform the action of the verb. And then we have a direct object, okay? And we're going to assume this is a noun again, okay? Remember, a verb is something else. That's a different part of speech. We don't know any verbs yet. We're not going to learn Greek verbs until Module 2. But subjects and direct objects are nouns for the most part, okay? And the direct object is going to receive the action of the verb, okay? The subject is going to perform the verb onto the direct object, okay? So, for an example, Lily chased the ball. That's our sentence. So Lily is the subject, and she's going to perform the action, the chase. She is going to chase the direct object, which in this case is the ball, okay? Those are the basic parts of an English sentence, okay? Now, we're going to learn our first case in Greek. Here we go. The nominative case is the first case we're going to learn. It's the first and it's the most straightforward. There's less weirdness with the nominative case than some of these others, and it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes it's called the naming case. That's where the name nominative comes from. It comes from the naming case. And the nominative, here's the main thing to pay attention to. It's underlined in the sentence there. The nominative will be the subject of the sentence. The nominative is the subject of the sentence. So let me show you an example here. In this Greek sentence here, hatheas agapa tan kosmon, we have two nouns and a verb. Agapa is the verb. You don't know that yet, so don't worry about that. But we do have two nouns there. Hatheas and tan kosmon. Now, hatheas, God, is in the nominative case. So that is going to be our subject. Okay? Our verb agapa means loves. So it's going to be God loves. And we know that theos is the subject of the sentence. Why? Because it's in the nominative case. That's how we know it's the subject. We find the nominative first, and that's our subject of the sentence. Now, tan kosmon, we haven't gotten to this part yet, but tan kosmon is actually in the accusative case, which is going to be the direct object. That's how we know that tan kosmon, or world in this case, is going to receive the action of the verb. So this sentence says, God loves the world. God loves the world. Now, how do we know that it's not the world loves God? Okay? Well, it's because of the cases. It's not because of the word order. For example, let me show you this sentence. Agapa hatheas ton kosmon. Now look at this. What has changed in this sentence? Well, we've moved the verb to the front of the sentence, and now hatheas comes second. But notice, hatheas is still in the nominative case. Nothing changed there. Even though we turned the sentence around, even though we messed with the order, and your English brain may get a little nervous there, we haven't changed the meaning of the sentence. It still means God loves the world. Why? Because case determines function. Because the nominative is the subject of the sentence. Remember, the tip of the day is embrace the case. We have to embrace the realization that these cases are telling us what the words are doing, not the word order. Okay, so let's talk about accusative. I mentioned it just a second ago. The second and also fairly straightforward case, also pretty simple case that we're going to learn, is the accusative case. The accusative. You can see the word accuse in there, right? You think of somebody who's being accused as being on the receiving end of some sort of a blame, an accusation or something like that. Okay, and that's kind of what's going on with this idea, because this will be the direct object of the sentence. The direct object is going to receive the action of the verb, as we talked about a little bit above. So, in our sentence again, God loves the world. Ton kosmon there is the accusative, okay? It's receiving the love from the subject, which is God, okay? And we can move those words around in different ways, but it's the case that determines function, not the word order. Let's go back to our parts of a sentence diagram here. So remember, the subject is going to be nominative, and it's going to be the subject of the sentence. It's going to perform the action of the verb onto the direct object, which is the accusative case. And so for our example, Lily chased the ball. If this was in Greek, Lily would be in what case? Nominative, right? Chased the ball would be in which case? Accusative, yes, because it's the direct object of the sentence. And so we see our sentence again here, ton kosmon there. In each sentence, that is the accusative case and how we learn things. So let me show you the case endings chart here. I'm going to show you a couple of these sort of in rapid succession. This is Biblical Greek made easy. I want you to pick the way that makes the most sense to you. I'll tell you what makes the most sense to me and the way that I advocate my students to learn these, but at the end of the day, you do what works for you, okay? So this is our first case endings chart that we're going to see. And you see there that you see those numbers up across the top row. We have masculine, feminine, and then neuter. And notice there's 2 and then 1 and then 2. That's because masculine is going to be second declension, feminine is going to be first declension, and neuter is going to be second declension again. So don't worry about that, right? Those are just patterns that words follow. I'll tell you what those mean more in future lessons. But for right now, if you're wondering what those numbers mean, that's what's going on. So what you're looking at here, these are the case endings that are going to go on the end of the stem of the noun. And you may be looking and you say, hold on, nominative singular in the feminine just has a line there. What's going on? Right, because it's not going to take an ending. There's not going to be a case ending for that one. It's going to stand out because it doesn't have an ending on it. Okay, so these are the case endings. I don't think this is the most helpful chart, though. Let me show you another one here. This is the case endings chart, but what we've done is we've added the last vowel in the word. Okay, this is a little bit more helpful because this is closer to what it will actually look like in context, but I think there's a better list to show you, a better chart to show you, and it's this third one here. This is a case endings chart that actually has the endings connected to actual words, to real words that show up in the New Testament. So the first one there on the top left, nominative masculine singular, is logos. Okay, that means word, and logos is the form that would show up if it was the subject of the sentence because it's nominative, okay? And if you go down that column, the accusative singular is lagon. Lagon. Notice it's ending in a new. That's that accusative ending, okay? And then we keep going. Nominative plural, lagoi. Okay, that's if words plural was going to be the subject of a sentence, you would say lagoi. And then their accusative plural, you see, lagus. Lagus is the accusative plural. So those are the 4 forms for this lesson for lagos. Lagos, lagon, lagoi, and lagus are the 4. Now again, you can look at them in those other versions where it just shows the ending, or it shows the last vowel with the ending if you'd like to. But I think this is a little bit better. Now, of course, there's lots of different words that can show up masculine, nominative, singular, masculine, accusative, singular, etc. But I think it's helpful to see them connected to actual words. There for the feminine. You see in the feminine chart, graphe. There's no extra ending on the end of that. It's just graphe. And then accusative singular, graphane. Graphane. And then we have the nominative plural, graphai, which means writings or scriptures. And then the last one there, graphos, accusative plural, writings or scriptures that's receiving the action of the verb, okay? And then in the neuter, we're picking a masculine, a feminine, and a neuter just as examples here. You see ergon is the nominative neuter singular. And notice the accusative singular for the neuter as well. It's also ergon. It's the same. And you're going to notice that in neuter, that's really, really common, that nominative singular and accusative singular are the same. And then look at the plural. It's erga for nominative plural. And then accusative plural is also erga. Is that ever confusing when you're reading the New Testament and you have the same word that can be multiple forms? No, it's really not. It's really not, because context is going to help us with that all the time. So there are 12 words for you that can help get you started. What you want to do is you want to start recognizing those endings for the cases they are. So maybe you made 12 flashcards, or I guess in this case it'd be 10 flashcards if you put ergon, if you just had one version of ergon and one version of erga, 10 flashcards, and you go through them, and when you see that word, can you say feminine accusative singular, nominative masculine singular, neuter accusative plural, neuter nominative or accusative plural, that sort of thing? Can you recognize those from the endings as they're attached to words? If it's easier to just look at the endings, that's fine too. But we need to start recognizing those, because as I said, every sentence in the New Testament that we translate is going to have nouns and cases that we need to know. Now, let's do a quick review. We started by talking about Greek nouns. We're learning that system of how Greek formulates nouns, how it uses cases to tell us the function of the sentence. We talked about declensions, which, remember, a declension is just a pattern that a group of words follow. It's a big, scary grammatical word, but it's really just a pattern, okay? We talked about the parts of a sentence. We talked about a subject and a verb and a direct object and what each of those do. And then we talked about our first 2 cases in Greek. The nominative case, which is the case that will be the subject of the sentence, and the accusative case, the case that will be the direct object of the sentence. Those are important elements to understand. Take your time, review these, practice these, start to learn some of the vocabulary, and practice seeing what these different versions will look like, and you'll be there before you know it. Happy studying, friends. I'm proud of you. Keep going. We'll see you next time.